Hey folks, this is Gary with Creeley Blades, and I want to introduce to you a new steel today called Damax Damascus steel. So why am I introducing this? Well, this is a pretty significant product that I don't think a lot of people know about, and I want to tell you why you might be interested in it. It's a unique product. It would be competitive to Damasteel in a lot of ways, but the pricing is considerably less than Damasteel, and it has pretty similar performance. And we're going to look into all those things. But let's start out by looking at their promotional video. Alleima. Who's Alleima? So let me explain to you who Alleima is. Maybe some of you already know and some don't. On your left, the blue Sandvik logo. That is Sandvik, who we've all known and loved over the years. To the right is the current Sandvik logo. And these days, Sandvik spun off Alleima as a separate company, and there's a relationship of some sort. And I didn't research or dig into all of the particulars of that, not that it matters for our purposes. But Alleima is the wing of Sandvik that will be handling the kinds of steel that us knife makers are interested in and knife buyers are interested in. So Alleima is Sandvik. I say Alleima is the artist formerly known as Sandvik. So now you know. So that's that piece. Here's a knife that I made in some of the new Alleima Dmax. As you guys know, Damascus and fancy knives are not necessarily my thing, but you can get a little look at the pattern here and get a sense of, what it looks like. Now, I etched this in hydrochloric acid, and I think for a better contrast, I would use sulfuric, but I didn't have any of that readily available. The process of using this steel is a great deal like using Damasteel, really. Very similar in a lot of ways. Now, this is my design on a hunting knife. However, my friend Robert Appleby finished this knife out. I gave him an unhardened blank, and he basically made the knife from there. And so we're going to actually enter this in a Dmax competition at Blade Show coming up here in June. So you can see he does great work. Unlike me, who is not very fancy, I put big old bolts in to hold the handles on. He's got rolled pins. I believe that's bog oak. It's Egerling Damascus on the bolsters and the pommel. He went a little extra mile there with the web theming on the flats, because the flats of this steel aren't going to have a pattern on them. And that's one thing I want to talk about with these blades, with this steel. It's a straight pattern. It's a 135 layer pattern. Now, what they would encourage you to do if you wanted some more movement like you saw in some of those other pieces, you can, even if you're not a forging guy, even if you're a stock removal guy, you could heat it up and bend it around and do some things like hit it with a peening hammer or things like that and get a little different movement in that straight pattern. But the way it comes at the moment is a straight pattern, and they're talking about in the future making some more varied patterns like you saw in that video. But let's talk a little bit about the performance of the steel. This is the toughness performance, and you can see that it is in line with a lot of other competitive types of Damascus. Surprisingly, it is not as tough as I would have guessed it would be considering the component steels, but it is in the neighborhood of Damasteel. Now, I should mention something here. I'm glossing over something. 19C27 is the one component steel of Dmax, but there's a second component steel, which is an equivalent to 716. I borrowed this testing material from Laren over at Knife Steel Nerds, and his father, Devin, made some Damascus with basically the two same steels that Dmax is. This is not a test of Dmax steel, but this is a test of these two component steels together. I don't imagine there would be an enormous difference. There is some toughness differences in the pattern of the Damascus that can have. So now we're at edge retention. This is the Catra edge retention test. And you can see in this test, at least this version, this isn't directly Dmax being tested. This is a equivalent arrangement. Does quite well on the Catra test, beating out, at least in this particular test, just barely Damasteel, which you might have thought would be more higher edge holding. Now 19C27 is equivalent to AEB. Now you think I'm going to say L next. I'm not. L as in Lima. It's similar to AEBH as in Hector. So it's a 0.95 carbon content in the 19C27. So that's pretty high for, compared to some of these other steels, compared to an AEBL, which is 0.65, for instance. And moving on here it is in the context of a lot of steels that you might find familiar. Now, you'll see there's a big red dot with an arrow, a squiggly arrow. That I know that it is very artistic and pretty. Thank you in the comments section for that. But that is roughly taking it from the previous chart where it would land. And it's in pretty good company, 154 cm and 2 edging out probably, certainly edging out Apex Ultra at the same hardness. 14 edging out 14C, 440C. I mean, there's a lot of good steels down below it, well above AEBL. So this is actually a pretty decent edge holding steel for a cooking knife. Or any kind of knife. I happen to make a cooking knife with it, so I have that top of mind. I want to come back a little bit here to just talk about the component steels here. 19C27, which is AEBH equivalent, and 7C27 MO2. Now, I didn't remember that till I came back to my notes. I have it in the note of this picture. And it is a pretty lower carbon steel, but highly, highly stain resistant, highly, highly corrosion resistant. Like, why should you consider this steel? A big reason for it is pricing. Now, talking to the folks at Alleima, they did not necessarily want me to give out specific pricing because I imagine they're still working it out. But in a rough sense, it's in the neighborhood of maybe like twice a MagnaCut, something like that, give or take, maybe 2 or 3 times something like MagnaCut will cost. Now you might say, oh, that's super expensive. Well, when you take a look at Damasteel, it's even more expensive. Another interesting point about this steel is you can get it not in enormous sheets, but you can get it in moderate sized sheets, maybe, 18 inches by 24 inches or something like that. I don't want to promise anything for them, but it comes in sheets where you could laser it out or water jet it out and make multiple knives in a Damascus steel in a way that would be hard to do with, say, Damasteel that's coming in strips. Perhaps they also have wider sheets available. I don't know, but that's not something I've seen. And you can get this directly from Alleima and contact them. Frank is the contact, and if you want more information on that, I can get it to you. Perhaps I'll put it in the description of this video. That really makes it so if you're doing batches, a lot of batches of knives or chef's knives and different things like that, it does really make it practical to use this stuff And judging from Laren's testing, which again isn't exactly on the steel, but with those two component steels, they should behave. And it does appear like there's no inclusions. I didn't see anything like that. It's really clean. I've always liked Sandvik steel, and this is, the latest iteration of it as Alleima. I've always liked their steel. It's clean. It's nice to work with. It's easy to grind. And if you know how to use Damasteel, you'll know how to use this. If this is something you are interested in, stainless Damascus, I think a lot of the culinary world will like it, or just, a folder, you want it to be a little fancier, or whatever kind of knife, and you're not a forging guy and you've been using Damasteel, this might be an alternative. Damasteel has more interesting patterns right now, so I would imagine they kind of win on that score. But if you wanted to do a group of knives, like matching knives in something a little fancier than just a mono steel, I think it's a cool product. I still have a few more to finish out, but I would, I'd highly consider it. And I just like to be able to introduce some of this newer stuff. This is a newer product. They are a newer company, and and a lot of you guys might not even know it's out there. So I hope it was helpful. If it was, feel free to subscribe or not subscribe, or like the video or don't like the video, or comment on it. That helps the algorithm so I can grow the channel and, get information out to more people. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.